So, hey Reggie, so thanks so much for joining me today. Now, we all in SAS know how important data ethics is, but if we think about the retail and consumer goods industry, and in the spirit of did you find everything you were looking for, and as these industries are trying to solve that problem, perhaps using innovation and technology to help, the consumer and the end customer, any advice we should be giving this industry when it comes to this topic?
I like to say when it comes to data ethics and trustworthy AI, it all starts before the first line of code is written, right? So it starts with the people asking the question, not only can we, but should we? That then clearly leads you down the path of data acquisition. How do we acquire information about people? I know it's a big thing in your space. Should we track? Should we surveil? Should we accumulate? And if we do, how do we use it? How do we use it responsibly? And then importantly, and I think this is a gap for a lot of industries, how do we dispose of it, right? And so I think there are a lot of opportunities, for the retail CPG sector to think about putting more intelligence into products for sure, putting more intelligence into services for sure, but also thinking about equitable distribution of how data may be used for purposes that, let's say, for positive bias. So I have this thing, we talk in our space a lot about bias and how that might have a negative impact and harm people. But if you think about bias for justice as an example, what would it look like if you're a major retailer and you've wanted to invest in lower economic environments that haven't had the opportunity to thrive? What would it look like to bring AI into those spaces? Perhaps a novel way of allowing people to interact with an organization to get goods and services into those neighborhoods, again, for the purpose of helping them thrive. So I think there are a tremendous number of ways that we can look at this. It's easy to just say, what are we going to do with data? But I think the conversation needs to be far more comprehensive in thinking about perhaps how we might adjust business models even in order to accommodate some of the needs of, quite frankly, the most vulnerable among us.
Sure. Now you talked about retail there. If I think going back up the supply chain to the consumer goods company or the manufacturer, all the way back up the supply chain, any thoughts there? Because where product is coming from and those kind of things. How should we be thinking about that?
Clearly, the closer we get to things like commoditization, generally what can be automated has already been automated at that point in time. But as you go further up the chain, you can think about ways that we might better optimize, better forecast, those sorts of things. Now, where's the ethical play in all of that? Well, who are we forecasting for? What data are we using to provide the forecast? And is that data that we're using, is it subject to historical bias or exclusion bias and these sorts of things that help us to continue to justify not making investments in certain areas that perhaps we should? So I think there are ways for us to consider it from that vantage point. I also think about, again, when we say the most vulnerable, it's easy to kind of conjure up certain images, but what about the people who just need assistance? If you are sight impaired or blind, right? Shouldn't you have the ability to take advantage of goods and services just the same, right? If I'm able to call an Uber, get in the car, and drive to a local retailer, and now I'm stuck because I can't actually get anything off the shelf. Are there ways that we might be able to use AI as an assistive technology for situations like that to allow people to be more independent? I know you asked me to go up chain, and I quickly went back down, but those are the sorts of things that we should be thinking about in terms of how we use this technology.
Sure. And our industry, it's exploded online. We saw that over the last 2 or 3 years as customer shopping behavior has changed, and our industry is trying to figure out how to interact more with these customers. Any watch outs for people in this space around what they should and shouldn't be doing?
Oh, absolutely. So as you say, you guys are all about engagement, shaping the customer experience, and that's all fantastic. Again, we have to ask the question, not only can we, but should we? So I was asked by my wife the other day to stop by our local retailer, Target, where she had ordered some goods. That's all great, but I pulled up the app, and the first thing it asked me was to track my location, right? One time or forever. So why do you need to track me forever is the question. Now, I'm sure that there's something really good in that for them in terms of being able to provide me services based on location and that sort of thing. But what's in it for me, right? And so I think the big lesson there for all providers is, are we being extractive or are we being generative in any way, shape, or form? And if the answer is always extractive, then I think there's an opportunity to rethink the business model to consider how you add more value to the end user.
Yeah, that's a great example and great advice. And I think, your point there around adding value to the end user is so important. So, Reggie, I really appreciate your time today, and thank you for hanging out with me.
Appreciate it.